Oh, hello, my friend.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good. I am so freaking happy that you are here with me today.
I'm happy.
Oh, it just feels good. It feels like the world is in the right place at the right time right now.
Mm,
Oh, just like when I met you. I feel like I was in a moment of a little bit of chaos,
yeah.
and I had somebody who was there to take care of making sure my energy was in the right place. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you so very much for just, I mean, existing on this earth, I guess, is part
Yes.
of it.
And that was almost a whole year ago.
But
Can you believe that?
yeah, no, no, well, kind of. There are
Where,
parts that I can and parts that I can't believe about that.
where did a friggin' year go?
Oh, and why am I not in Santa Barbara again?
Help.
So I'll just hop on a plane. I'll meet you there. Okay.
See you in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So, uh, yeah, I'm excited. I need to tone myself down for a second. So I would love to share with everybody a little bit about your journey,
Hmm.
the things that have made you who you are, have made you change your course in life, and my favorite, the aha moments that have made Elizabeth DiAlto
Mm.
Elizabeth DiAlto.
So the thing that I love telling people, like really set me on my path, is that I sold Cutco Knives. Are you familiar with Cutco Knives?
Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
didn't just sell Cutco knives. I was the number 10 sales rep in the nation out of about 20,000 when I was 19 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I sold the shit
What?
out of those knives. And then I stayed with that company. I worked with them for 5 years because they have this incredible management training program. Like a lot of people hear about it and they're like, door to door, like it's a scam. It's really not. No sales job is ever going to be for everyone because a lot of people have huge aversions to sales. I do not. And it's very much like the type of thing that you get out what you put in. And
Right.
that just worked for me. The reason I sold so much my first summer is because first of all, there was a girl in my office who was also cranking, so we were competing with each other all summer.
Yes.
And also because they were like, just call as many people as you can. The more you have to get through some no's to get to the yeses. And I'm like, okay, cool. I called like my entire high school directory, then my entire brother's middle school directory, and then just like got referrals. Like I was like, oh, I just need to do like 3 or 4 appointments a day. Sure. Like, and I have no problem with working.
Right.
I'd worked summer jobs like my whole teens through high school and stuff, and I was used to putting in the hours.
Yeah.
But then this was like a commission structure, and I was good at sales, but the products were the bomb anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
if I just showed up, I couldn't mess up.
Yeah.
So that was really funny. But then I went through the management training program, and what was so cool about that is I got to speak at local team meetings, divisional meetings, regional meetings. So I was getting public speaking training, and then I was helping to recruit and train the sales team, run team meetings. I actually got so many skills that literally to this day, I look at all the things that I do in my business now and I'm like, that started with my Cutco training. And I still have friends like 15, 16 years later who still work there. I just
Yeah.
went to meet up. They had their national conference here in LA last year, and I went to meet up with them. And I'm like, y'all, have me come speak at a conference or something
Yes.
because I still rave about how this was absolutely invaluable experience for me. I mean, there's so many reasons, but one of the real things you were talking about, like ahas,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have the aversion of failure or rejection that a lot of people
Oh,
have because I was like, oh, you got to get through the no's to get to the
right.
yeses. It's just not just keep going, just
Yeah.
keep going.
I feel like this is sponsored by Cutco right now.
Sponsored by Cutco. Yep. But and then when I did eventually burn out on that because I was in my early 20s and like I was making so much money, but I didn't know how to manage my money. And then I was running an office. My district was Washington, D.C. I was recruiting and training my own sales force. Um, and so to dip into like the social justice conversations that you and I have
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of my reps were coming from like these neighborhoods in Prince George's County or Southeast DC where it was like the cost of the knives was really prohibitive to like who their customer base was. And that was like I grew up in New York on Staten Island, and so I was familiar with like the full range. I went to like my elementary school and middle school, like I had the full range of everyone.
Yeah.
But to actually get more of a view into like people's personal lives who were coming from much different places, that was really illuminating for me.
Yeah.
Um,
And they didn't necessarily have that high school list and middle school list that they could just crank through and say, you guys all want these, right?
Well, some of them did. And what was fascinating is that my reps who were more successful were the reps who were like athletes that went to prep schools.
Mm-hmm.
And it really like my face was like right up in these real disparities
Yeah.
that I'd never had that close and intimate in my face before. So that was an invaluable experience, actually, that aspect of it. In a lot of ways heartbreaking, but it's so important for me to be closer and have more of like an intimate experience of other people's lived experiences. Like when a rep calls you and is like, "Hey, Miss Liz, I can't make it to the meeting. My friend got shot," and I'm like, "Okay, that's real."
Okay. Yep.
Or when like a 17-year-old girl comes into the interview with like her baby carriage, and I'm like, "This is real." Like, you know what I mean? This isn't my experience. This is real. This isn't like something I'm seeing on a TV show that I can. So something I've always appreciated about that is just taking things from an experience that exists to something that like, okay, it's here and I can feel these people and I can see them and I can meet them and like drop any stereotype because there's a living, breathing person with a heart in front of me who's like an amazing human being. Right. I can't just make this shit up about them that like TV or the media would tell me,
And they're not that different from you.
And they're not that different. Like, no. So I loved that, actually. My team name was the DC Regulators, and our team cheer was Regulators.
Yes. Yes.
So, that was like the first chunk of my career. I tried a year in corporate sales. Didn't last there. Working for other, like, even though at Cutco I was working for a company technically, I was always doing my own thing. I was always an independent contractor, doing my own appointments, setting my own schedule, running my own office, recruiting my own team. So to go work in a corporate sales environment where it was like you had to report in and show for the sales meetings and all these things, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Took a huge pivot after that and became a personal trainer.
Ooh.
Which I had loved fitness my whole life. I'd been working out since I was 12. Yeah. Thank you very much. 1994, TLC and Janet Jackson's abs in their music videos. I was like, I would like to start exercising.
What is that all about? Can I, Janet,
how do I get those abs in the waterfalls video?
Yes.
I want to know how love goes. In that video, I'm gonna go to a sexy party.
I'm gonna go watch that like right after this.
I still listen to that song on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I'm still looking for those silk pajamas that TLC is wearing in the Creep video. Where could I get some of those?
God, you knew that you were just like, you made it if you had silk. Silk pajamas. Yeah.
So I loved personal training and I taught group exercise classes, and it's still like I had all this experience at Cutco training and running interviews and like being in front of groups. So it was like a very natural progression, just different topic. Took a giant pay cut though.
Right.
So that was hard. And then, I was like, how am I going to make money in this personal training thing about 3 or 4 years in? And I decided to go to grad school for exercise physiology. I thought, all right, maybe I'll go a corporate route. Maybe I could work in corporate wellness. Right. No, Elizabeth, you're really not built to work for other people. I did a semester of grad school at GW for exercise physiology. And when I say a semester, I mean, I stopped going in November.
Okay. All right. So like a month and a half, 2 months. Gotcha.
And then I owed them $10,000. So stupid.
You're welcome for the investment, guys.
You're welcome. Yeah. One of the first of many expensive lessons I would have on my entrepreneurial path. And that's when I discovered Marie Forleo. So Marie was kind of like my indoctrination into this entrepreneurial world that mostly exists online. And I was very similar to Marie. I really resonated with her at the time. I did her mastermind. Like I justified. I was like, whatever. I was going to spend this money on grad school anyway. Instead, I'm going to give Marie Forleo $20,000 to help me figure out how to run a business. And that actually was a very fruitful, very important, very foundational building year for me. And so I started to do my fitness business online. And I was creating online programs and stuff like that. But still, like, there's always these little heart nudges that are like, but there's more. And so even after a couple of years of that, combined with I was still personal training for a while, I just got more curious. What's going on underneath the hood with people? How come my clients could like eat what they're, quote, supposed to eat, exercise, show up, do, again, air quotes, all the right things, but anything in their personal life comes up and wipes the results right out.
Yep.
I also had started dating someone who was into like energy healing and law of attraction, like all the gateway drugs, Reiki and Abraham Hicks.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Done and done.
Tony Robbins. I went to Unleash the Power Within. I walked on the hot coals. And but then even after a year or two of that, I was still
Yeah.
hungrier. Like, there has to be more.
Yeah.
Now I understand about myself. The way I'm built is for like the depth and the nuance and the complexity and integration, right?
Yes.
The light and the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to be able to go into the depths to reach the highest heights, all of these things. But then also, to put another polarity together, and I've been going back and forth on this a lot recently, the gendered terms, masculine and feminine.
Yes.
But in the context of energetics, I am still okay using them. Some people won't like it and they'll be like, screw this. That's okay. But if you can hang with the conversation, just this idea that like we do all contain multitudes, and some of them are more structured, linear. They provide the order. Some of them are a little leaning more towards emotions, creativity, chaos, flow.
Mm-hmm.
You might relate to this as masculine and feminine. You might call it chaos and order. Some people call it expressiveness and instrumentality, whatever terms you want to use, to integrate these things and know when it's appropriate to call on one and the other, and to familiarize yourself with both the shadow and the gift aspects of them within you, as well as tuning in with like the seasons and cycles and phases of your life.
Yeah.
This is what I mean, right? And the nuance and the weaving all these things together, looking at the layers and seeing how it all works. That's the stuff. That's the work I do now.
Yeah.
But I needed all the little puzzle pieces,
Yeah. And I think there's a part of this, right? And that even in that constant like little search that you were trying, you're like, I'll go to grad school. I'll do it the way they tell me to do it. There's this space when you're finding like the label that you need to become or the track that you need to go on to learn. You have to structure yourself outside of those bounds. You don't give yourself the flexibility to, because like, yes, okay, they kind of seem as polarity, but at the same time, they actually could operate really nicely together in different times too. Yeah.
In fact, we need the other. My favorite metaphor, which I got from my friend Michaela Boehm, it's like a river. A river isn't a river without the banks.
Truth. Ooh,
so like that container, that structure, that form, that's kind of like that masculine, right? And then the water can flow and the water will change. It'll be calm and serene sometimes. It'll be rushing. It'll be higher. It'll be lower. But again, if there was no container, if there was no banks, it would just be a huge puddle or a marshland or a swamp, right?
Right. And even like the ocean in the same way, right? Where the ocean would feel like that vast. You don't see the banks necessarily, but there are things, there's the lunar aspect of what pulls the tides and all of that, that's actually anchoring it one way or another.
1,000%. And so, but the way I narrow it in for people so it could be understandable is I describe it two ways now. I help women untame themselves. And that just looks like looking at the programming and conditioning, just like I did, right? All along those little steps, I had to keep bumping into things and going, I get that this works for some people, but it doesn't work for me. Why? And keep looking under my own hood.
Yes.
And discovering the parts of myself that had always been there. They just weren't encouraged or expressed or welcomed by this culture that we live in.
Right. I'm going to use the words, that is truly taming you. That is showing you how to present yourself effectively in the way that society wants you to.
100%. And that's a combination of school, family of origin, the greater culture at large, the government, living in the United States. I recently spent 3 weeks in Australia, and I've spent a good bit of time in Europe over the last couple of years, and even also like Hawaii, which is the US, but feels totally different. And I love exposing myself to different cultures to see how these things express there. It's just a little different. It's a very oppression is everywhere, but the specific formula of oppression here in this country, it's distinct, and it's so intense. And I'm not even, I occupy a good mix of dominant and non-dominant groups. So I feel like, and you and I share this is what we bonded over, as being this ethnically ambiguous. I can be invited into places because they don't necessarily know where to put me. I have access. Some people might not, but also I'm other.
Right. And I get to witness in my face a lot of times the oppression of identities that I identify with that they don't know. So it's not just that you're dancing and skirting around something that I can be separate from, but there's a lot of times when you're saying things about me and my family without you even realizing. So you're really not filtering it. You're not putting that PC filter that we have here. I mean, you have it in other places, but I do think there's a part of our American culture that has this idea of if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't really exist, right? It's this post-racial America. And it's, it's this post-feminist movement America where it's like, well, just because we learned about a period of time where people were speaking out about it doesn't mean that it's gone.
Girl, have I introduced you to, do you follow my buddy, Dr. T? Do you know who he is?
No, I'm writing it down right
I'll connect you guys. He'd be a great guest for you.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite people to talk to about all things under the category of like liberatory consciousness. And I was actually catching up with him yesterday. And one of the things that he was saying is, first of all, the label doing the work means a lot of different things.
Right.
But he was saying one of the problems that he sees, especially in social media, if that's like the primary place where people are, quote, doing their work around this stuff, is that people are only learning how to what to think. They're not learning how to think about it.
Yes.
So you're seeing a lot of people. I know, right?
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of people, but I also think there's phases of development and learning.
Yep.
So you're seeing a lot of people who now have vernacular.
Yep.
Who now know what they should and shouldn't be saying.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that they've really, again, lifted up the hood and they've unpacked their own unconscious biases.
Right.
How they actually think, how they actually show up, how they actually react. Again, when people are in their face or in their
and
shit.
They feel, right? So there is this whole, I mean, you and I have talked about this and you've been so encouraging about it. This idea of we put so much value in living in our heads, of being so intelligent and intellectual in our society. And sure, learn the words, right? Learn the script. But then when you have to live it, it's not just the way your thoughts are, but it's the way you feel. And it's the way you in your body react to things. Like
100%.
There is so much that's more than just the language. And it's more than, again, the intent. It's actually what you are doing with your body, with your facial expressions, with your voice. And it happens in person. I would also say, and this is weird because obviously social media, you're not necessarily having that kind of three-dimensional dynamic with someone, but if you ever look at the comment section, I know you do, of conversations where there is, whether it's actually overtly about race or not, I've been very aware of the different tone that's leveraged. So
100%.
Yeah, okay, you might not use a word that is offensive to someone, but just the tone that you use between one commenter and another because you saw their profile picture was different. I'm very tuned into something like that at this point because I am so nervous that I'm creating a space that allows for that to happen and I'm not necessarily aware of it. So I have dialed my volume so high up to be like, okay, the micro stuff. And microaggressions, again, becomes a word that can get pretty diluted if people just throw it out all over the place. But to really pay attention to the nuance of everything you're doing, not just the simplicity of saying, well, I don't use that word anymore, so I'm fine.
100%. And people are always going to miss stuff. And I'm glad you're bringing up tone because I actually had an experience. So my buddy, Dr. T, he has a group actually specifically for, and he's mixed. I don't specifically know like the percentages, but I know he's black and white. And he has a space for white people processing things. And he's like PhD, studied UMass Amherst, like this is his work,
Yes.
And he's been doing it like on the ground for like decades. So he's at some like social, and actually let me catch my own tone and not say it in like a degrading way, like some social media, social justice for it. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is like, we do see this as well, right?
Yes.
That there are these people who have risen to fame because they've gone viral.
Yes.
Who might not necessarily have the education, training, or experience that some educators who've been doing this work forever.
Right.
Long
and a lot of the historical elements of it too, right?
Exactly.
That can feed so much because history is replaying itself in a lot of what's going on right now.
Yeah. So I don't want to say that in a way. Me personally, I'm always going to choose teachers that have deeper practice, longer experience, and just exposure to a lot more things. I value in person in real life, right? Because online can be very deceiving, right? And we do live in a culture that equates followers, like those vanity metrics, with quality. That's not always credible. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. It's not always the case. So anyway, he has a group. specifically where white people can process stuff, because one of the core things that he teaches is harm reduction.
Oh,
So I've actually had some friends be like, I don't know about that. I think that's like coddling white folks. And he's like, here's why it's not. I'm not out here. I'm not going to allow my people to be re-traumatized while white people process their stuff. So he
yeah.
has a space just for white folks. So, and he has this also space for multi-ethnic people. And I'm like, thank you so much, because I
Can
need
I
to know
go?
that.
Yes, yes.
And I posted something in there, and someone left a really passive aggressive comment on my post. And for like a small moment, I wanted to respond and let her
Yes.
know how passive aggressive it was. And I was like,
Yeah.
but I could just see this is her response, because clearly this is where she's coming from. Like, she has her own trauma, she has her own wounds. So I posted something about this the other day. Like, so much of what we see online and what's so unproductive is just like trauma interacting with trauma, wounds
Yes.
poking against other people's wounds.
Creating more wounds.
So it's
Yeah.
like, I get that there's so much to be done. And I'm not out telling anyone that they shouldn't be angry, they shouldn't be upset, they shouldn't be whatever. But to the extent that we can cultivate kindness, compassion, and lead with curiosity, rather than like the assumptions and the passive aggressive, and like, again, because and people like you and I, people can look at us. I'm white passing.
Oh,
People
yeah.
don't know I'm half
Right.
Latina,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
People, I mean, we've talked about this, the number one
Yeah.
question of our lives, what are you?
Yes. Oh, all
Not,
day.
not to mention how that affects your psyche. Well, what
Yes.
am I?
Well, and then I actually had an experience this weekend of what are you? And then I tell you and you tell me I'm not. And I'm like, okay. So there is
Girl,
literally no way. There's no way for me to get this right in your mind. So why are we even having the conversation if you're not willing to have the conversation with me or even be curious, that you are so certain that you know who I am before I tell you who I am?
or that you have some kind of idea about like what I say. So for example, like whether it counts.
Yes.
Listen,
Yeah.
I can't. I was having a great conversation with my buddy Stan the other day, and he said something that I had never thought about before, and I think you might appreciate it. So he identifies as Black because he doesn't know the origins of his family. He doesn't know. Does his whole family come from Africa? Where in Africa? He doesn't know. So he says Black. But when he introduces you to people, he'll be like, this is so and so. She's from Morocco. This is Elizabeth. She's Italian and Puerto Rican. He identifies people by their ethnicity if he knows it. And this is something that I noticed. I'm doing Desiree Adaway's Freedom School.
Oh,
And
yes.
the topic of race or ethnicity came up, because the whole first couple modules were about identity,
Yeah.
which, by the way, if anyone doesn't know who Desiree is, I
Know
learned
her. Yes.
from her. And she is
Even in the
someone,
slightest things.
even the slightest things, but
Oh,
also she's also someone who's so fierce. She will not coddle you, but she will not also not shame you. I love that. So I was like, oh, I've actually, because being like a multi-ethnic person, I've always identified ethnicities. When I ask, because I find myself sensitive to the what are you question, but also curious because I want to know.
right.
So
Yep.
I can treat you as you are,
Yeah.
or as you want to identify. So that's kind of a paradox around that question for me.
Yes. Yeah. And it can also be, I will say personally, like it's something that evolves with your own ability to open yourself up to your own personal curiosity too.
Yes.
Because I will say that a significant portion of my life, because I have been an extremely white passing version of a biracial woman in a very predominantly white space, a lot of my identity has been in very white experiences. So I always felt fraudulent talking about the Haitian side of me, talking about the Black side of me, talking about the fact that when there is racism happening, I can see it in ways that white people might have the ability to put their blinders up and not see. But
100%.
I don't also have the I don't know, the word's not authority, but I haven't been given the space to say I am Black and this isn't okay. It's like, oh, this chick over here, good for her for seeing this for the first time. It's like, no, I've seen it, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say something right now.
I
So
get
yeah,
it.
it's that
I
whole
get it
dance.
so much. Right? Am I enough? Am I
Right.
Latina enough
Right.
to take a stand here?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yes.
That's actually something recently in LA. I'm so grateful. My friend Zoila, who I met like a year ago, she's
Mhm.
Aquarius. She's a gatherer, and
Yes.
and she's like us. She grew up in Spanish Harlem. She's Jamaican, and then I in the moment I'm losing what her Latina is. It might be
Mhm.
Dominican, but I might be wrong
Okay.
about that. But she's a great gatherer of people, and she tends to gather. It's like us, like a lot of just brown folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that is, I need that. I need that in my life. I need to be around Black and brown folks.
Yes.
And I noticed, I went to an event, you and I talked about this back in October of 2018, called Decentering Whiteness in Yoga and Mindfulness Spaces. And I just, this moment, it was like a veil was lifted of realizing how I felt, to come back to what you were saying. It's not just about we know, the vernacular, what we've learned, how we think we should think, or the ideologies. Um, the actual experience of being in a room where whiteness wasn't running the room, but it was a
Yes.
topic of conversation,
Mm.
how I felt in my heart and in my body, the way I was able to just like relax and be
Mm.
myself there, and acknowledge that there's an aspect of myself that cares so much about the liberation of Black and brown people.
Mm.
And
Yes.
it's not performative, and it's not
Right.
whatever. It's not trendy. This isn't on social media. Like it's always been in my heart. I remember being 10 years old, reading
Mhm.
To Kill a Mockingbird and crying and wondering at 10
Yeah. Oh yeah.
if I would have had the courage to be like Atticus Finch
Mm.
if I was growing up during the civil rights movement. And then the funny thing, you see these memes now that are
Yeah.
like, hey, have you ever wondered what you would have done during the civil rights movement? Well, you're doing it right now.
Here you go.
That's
Yeah.
right. Because
Yeah.
like first of all, it never went away,
Mm-hmm.
but we are kind of in this wave now
Right.
of where the shit, thanks Donald Trump, I guess, is
Across. Yeah.
just it's at the surface again in
Yeah.
a way that in my lifetime I haven't experienced, or just maybe I didn't have the awareness, or I wasn't at the age yet where I was noticing, or whatever.
Well, and I also think the whole idea of bringing it back to the social media piece, that people didn't have the platform to say what
Totally.
was going on, because the power and the privilege structures silenced people that were very,
Totally.
very aware of what was going on this whole time. They were never given any version of a platform to talk about it. And I will say, one of the things personally, I don't know that I ever realized where my platform or privilege fell, because I did identify majority in a lot of things because I was trying so hard to fit, right? And so hard to pass.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so hard for you to just look at me
Yes.
as Nikki and not any of the other, not
Totally.
because my hair was more frizzy than you, or I was a little darker, or I developed earlier, none of those things. Just
Girl.
how am I showing up on the soccer field? How am I doing in the classroom?
Yes.
How am I doing in those things? And so you're trying so hard for all those other things not to matter, that
Yeah.
though they matter, though deep inside you, like I remember you're mentioning 10 years old. I remember being so, so little and just knowing that I was being treated differently, knowing I wasn't making it to the next level of things because
Mm,
something about me was different. Because I was running just as fast, right? I was coming
mhm.
up with the same kind of things. I just couldn't put words to it. And I knew that if I had raised my hand and said something, whether it was in school or at home, it would make other people upset. It would cause
Mm.
them pain. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put my head down and push through. Because there weren't any people like you and me where I was. There weren't very many mixed people. Everybody, I don't know if I've told you this before, but like growing up Haitian, right? So people where I was didn't know what Haitian was, and they always thought was saying Asian, always, over and over and
Oh
over
my
again.
God.
And so they'd be like, "No, your dad's black though." I'm like, "Yeah, Haitian." And they'd be like, "No." I was like, "Okay, all right, cool."
That
Yeah.
part, like, fewer things make me stabbier than people saying no to something when they don't even know what it is.
Right, 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 right. And it's like, okay, right, because and again, you're in, like, I remember this is probably like first grade, and you kind of give the hands up thing. You're like, okay, fine, all right, cool, let's
Right.
go to the next thing, because like really, this wasn't supposed to be about my racial identity. It was supposed to be about what we're talking about. But okay, cool.
It's funny. I remember being in the first grade and someone was giving a report about Puerto Rico.
Mm,
And the way she was saying it with this, like, she was saying like Puerto Rico. And I was like, that's not how you say that. Like, half my family lives there. That's not how you say that, I'm like 6. And I'm like boiling in my seat. Like, why
uh,
is she saying it that way?
yeah. And it's also the beauty of, right, being that young is kind of that you aren't tamed yet
Yeah.
fully. So you're like, I've learned that I'm supposed to raise my hand, but my body feels it so much that I'm like, excuse me, can we fix this now? Because everybody's learning how to say it wrong.
Meanwhile, My dad speaks Spanish. My
Mm.
mom did not let him teach my brother and I Spanish because she did not want to be the only one in the house who couldn't understand, because she'd had that experience with his family the whole time they were
Yeah.
together. And instead of being like, hey, how about I learn some friggin' Spanish? She, takes the opportunity away from us. I'm only now not bitter about that anymore. And actually this year, like I understand so much Spanish, but I'm very speaking, I feel uncomfortable. And I could speak with an accent, but I feel like you said the word fraudulent earlier. I do.
Yep.
I feel that way because I my mom would get really irritated. Like if any word is Spanish, even like salsa, he'll say
Yeah.
salsa, you know?
Yeah.
Like he'll say it with an accent because that is he grew up in a
Yeah.
bilingual household.
Yep.
And why are you saying it that way? It's like, because that's how you say it when you speak the friggin' language.
Right.
So
Right.
I really do have a thing around. Actually, I went on a date last week with a man from Spain.
Yeah.
And he was like he's like, do you understand or whatever? And I would answer him and he was like, oh, you have an American accent. And I'm like,
I
but
know.
I don't, I actually know how to say it, but I literally, this is a real block for me.
Yeah.
I feel so self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know where it comes from. So even expressing that, feeling like a fraud, do I even deserve, like, it's so multifaceted and multi-layered.
It is. And like take that, God, I love that we went to language because I do think if you think of the cadence of that what are you, how the following cascading questions go, it's like, okay, what are you? You answer. And if that person's Haitian or has any Haitian friends, because
Hmm.
that's it's definitely the way you're supposed to say that.
Yeah.
They then ask, do you speak Creole? For me, or do you speak Spanish, or they start speaking to you in Spanish, and then you're like, oh God, so when people start speaking to me in Creole, I'm like, I understand kind of what you're saying, but like I grew up without learning the language, and I was asking to learn the language from a very young age because my grandmother didn't speak
Yes.
very much English, and my grandmother spoke through her food, which, as you know,
Mm,
I'm obsessed with food, so I was always so eager to be around her, and there was so much that language failed us because I didn't necessarily know Creole. So I ended up learning French, but still it's not the same. And in the same way, it's like you can go and learn Spanish right now, like Rosetta Stone's Spanish, and you're like, but I'm still going to feel slightly lacking because there is such something so ingrained to me that like that language is not for me, even if it was the young version of me.
this is literally making me want to cry
Yeah.
because also that is how people choose to evaluate if you're enough.
Yes.
Oh, do you speak Spanish? You don't speak Spanish? Bitch, do you speak Spanish? Like,
Yes.
get out of here with you deciding if I'm enough of what I am.
Right, right. And I will say on the other side of it, people think I speak Spanish because of the way I look. And I'm
Oh
like,
God,
actually,
yeah.
no, I don't speak Spanish. I probably know more Spanish than I do Creole because people speak to me all the time, but I don't know that language either. And people, I say I don't know it, and they're like, yeah, you do. And I'm like, wait, okay, so my
Right.
identity doesn't actually even make sense there, but okay.
I really hope people listening are also kind of taking the beat to be self-reflective around if or how you do this to others.
Yes.
Because I mean, I know I do too sometimes,
Oh,
right?
same.
And
Yep.
listen, even if it's innocent, because a lot of these things that I do, I'm an insatiably curious person.
Yes.
You know what? Actually, let me tell you, I did this yesterday.
Yeah.
I freaking knew, and I was like, damn it.
Yep.
I got introduced to someone whose name was Jerisa.
Okay.
I heard Teresa.
Yep.
And the way I record people's names, I asked them how they spell it. I was like, oh, do you do an H or no H? She was like, what? It's Teresa. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, so sorry. I thought I heard Teresa. She's like, yeah, it happens all the time. And I'm like, but that's really beautiful. I love that. I've never heard that before. And even in saying that, I noticed I was freaking othering her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as she was walking away, I'm like, wasn't cool.
Shoot. Yeah. Yep. I mean, the only, and it's funny because I feel like we all do that, right? Again, whether we all hear names that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes they're majority names that you've never heard before.
But if you
And
have that name, how
yes,
tired are you of that
so
experience? And
tired.
I'm so sorry I did it to you.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but I think even the fact that, right, that the work isn't necessarily that, oh, the only time you had the opportunity to fix it was before it happened, right? That, oh, I missed my chance, so I sucked at that. It's more like now, it's like, okay, how would I have handled that differently? Or maybe I don't know that I would necessarily have handled it completely differently, but maybe I would have called it out so that person didn't feel alone in the experience. I'm like, ugh, you probably like, I know this happens. I'm sure this happens a lot. I'm so sorry.
But also, maybe I don't assume that that was even a thing for that person, and burden them with the emotional labor of my reaction to my own behavior. Like, because there's so few right and wrongs.
Yes.
We're always doing our best is really important.
Yes.
And also, and then when it's called for, learning how to give a real apology.
Yes.
That is not just words, but comes with changed behavior and self-reflection, and repair when needed or necessary, you know?
Oh, well, I felt that through my body. I'm not. I was
prepared. So good.
I was prepared for this to be something that I'd feel throughout. And I'm surprised I haven't teared up yet. It'll happen.
I already did.
I know. I stopped looking. I couldn't look.
All right. What else? What else you want to talk about?
All right. So one of the things we talked about I want to, if you have like a specific story that you feel like encapsulates any experience of feeling othered or different beautifully, I want to give you the space to do like one or two of those if you'd like.
Yeah, you know what I want to bring it to? We've spent some time here on like race and identity.
Yeah.
Let's talk about body.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier like developing early. Same.
Yeah.
I'm Italian and Puerto Rican girl. One of my mom's cousin by marriage many years ago, I remember her she was this adorable woman. She was so lovely. I would always, she's like a distant cousin, so we wouldn't see them often, but we saw them at like, I don't know, someone's like 80th birthday party. This amazing, you were talking about food, this epic like Italian place in Brooklyn, like the best. And she was like, oh my dear, you have all the right curves in all the right places. And here's the thing. Thank you. And she said this in front of my whole family.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like.
And how old were you?
I think I had just graduated college. So like maybe 21, 22.
Yeah.
And it's what this brings up for me is this. It's the is paradox the word? I think it is. It's paradox of this thing that gets put on a pedestal, objectified, sexualized, fetishized, but also is quite beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
But then also creates shame for others.
Yes.
So, oh my God, I'm seeing this man right now who's so enjoyable. He is a former professional football player. He's 6'5". He is like literally like all man.
Yeah. Yep.
He plucked me out of the grocery store. Picked me right up. It was like, I'll buy your donut. Your fancy gluten-free vegan donut in Los Angeles. I'm buying that for you. I was like, oh my God. So anyway, I've been spending time with this man, and he was telling me this story about being in two different places, Paris and New York City, in the summer. And he'd been like working out or whatever. He was like riding his bike home with no shirt on. But again, he's this like massive, like football player build guy. There's like just muscles on muscles on muscle. And he's like, it's like my muscles were offending people. And I'm like, oh my God, I have the same experience with my curves.
Yes.
Right? It's like people are taking your physical structure as an affront to whatever is their judgment around what makes a man or a woman and how they compare to it. So I have the T and the A.
Yes. Right? Yes. And for most, it's probably more than enough to go around in your thought process. But guess what? They're mine, and I got them, and this is what I'm living with.
Like, what do you like? You know what I mean? I see people feel either it's a reflection of it's too much, or then they feel inadequate. They wish they had like, and these are the same, and it's the same kind of like other, because someone's either making it right or wrong. Right? Like I had an ex who was like, I feel like you could be in better shape than you are.
Oy.
And I was like, I love this.
Right.
I feel this makes me feel like more of a woman. That doesn't, and even when I say that, I always put an asterisk. That's, to me, it feels that way. That doesn't mean if you're listening and you have like no boobs or a flat butt that you're any less of a woman.
Exactly. Exactly.
To me, because honestly, it's all I've ever known and all I've ever had.
Yes.
this feels juicy to me. And it's also
Yeah.
taken me a long time to like fully accept
To get
it
there.
and
Yeah.
also get to a place within myself where I feel safe and resilient enough to
Mm.
actually not give a shit what other people think or how they're going to respond to it or what they're going to make it mean or whatever.
Yes. I think,
Be like, keep your opinion to yourself. I don't care. I love it.
yeah. And you know what? If you have an opinion, instead of spewing it all over me, maybe take a moment and think about what that opinion means, because 99% of the time has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that's actually, it happens a lot, and I from a physical appearance perspective, I've always felt very uncomfortable about it, because ever since I was younger, because people didn't necessarily know what I was, it was, oh, you're so exotic, or you're so pretty.
The
And I'm like,
exotic word gets me. What am I, a zoo animal?
right. And it's like, you know what? But am I smart? Like that, and that's as a little kid, I was always like, I don't care. Like, don't put me in dress. Like I was averse to anything that would make me pretty, because pretty was construed in a very weird way in the way that people communicated with
Have
me.
we talked about this? In the second
I
grade,
don't
I
think so.
decided my 8-year-old stance against this was
Yes.
deciding I was never going to wear a skirt again. And then I didn't until the 8th grade. So 6 years.
We
I
needed
wore
to see, we
both
needed to find each other.
baseball caps, basketball jerseys, anything
Yes.
back. Because I started growing, my breasts started popping in the 3rd grade.
Girl, 7 years old right here. Yes.
Covering
Get it out
up.
of here.
It was
Yep.
all about covering it up.
Mhm.
And I remember in the 6th grade, first pool party, being like, oh no,
Mhm.
I can't hide it. And everyone, and it was a thing.
Oh,
And
always. And even as an adult, right? So this is something recently I've been wrestling with, because I've been putting more photos of myself out doing things. And most of the time when I have, if you get a photo shoot or something, you get your hair and makeup done, so you look done up. And a lot of times it's me talking about stepping out and talking about myself. So doing something that's uncomfortable for me, and then it comes with the performative, hair and makeup that comes with it. And the reaction that I get from so many people is, you look so beautiful. And I'm like, did you read the caption? Like, there's a part of this that's like, though you're being kind and maybe you do think I look beautiful, great, cool, it feels oddly like catcalling at the same time. Like, the point of this post was to talk about the fact that, like, you can step into who you are, you can do all these really great things, and you can participate in conversations, and you are enough just as you are. But the one thing that gets taken away is how pretty you are, or how good your hair is, or how nice your makeup is. And it's like, oh, I know I'm supposed to say thank you. I know I'm supposed to hold that at a really high regard. But like you said, I like what's happening right now, right here. There have been times where I've been thinner. There have been times where I probably would think I was prettier or younger or any of that. But that is no longer the metric that gets to lead my self-value.
I'll respond to those. I'll be like, thank you so much. And that's not what this post is about.
Right. Yes. I also want to make sure I give a little bit of love. There was the post that you did a couple months ago about your breasts.
Yeah.
Girl, it was like you were in my brain. I loved everything about it. I loved how you broke down, like, this is for me. This is about me. If what I'm working with bothers you, like, that's not my body. That's not my thing. That's not my problem. But I welcome you to embrace your body too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go.
I mean, I put this boundary on my posts a lot in any context, not just around body stuff, but like, hey, if you have an opinion about this, keep it to yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking. Feel free. I'd love, and I'm not nasty about it. I'm like, listen, if you want to chime in a comment here, I'd love to hear your own experience or your own opinion about the topic, but I'm not interested in your feedback on my experience. My experience is not up for debate or discussion, but I'd love to hear your experience. People have a hard time with that.
They do.
But they so I get so many messages from people that are like, oh my God, you could do this. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. But then the discussions that happen when I set that boundary are so much richer.
And they're beautiful. Yeah. I know as somebody that's seeing these things happening, you model something that I wish we all did in daily conversation. It takes away from that need to listen to, or to hear, to know when you speak next, and really to listen to understand what that person's saying, and do a little bit more work to understand how that plays in your life, not your opinion of or your assessment of their way of living life.
I'm literally not asking for that. It's not solicited. And sometimes they'll be like, hey y'all, totally curious. I'd love some feedback on this.
Yep.
But I will tell you. And then I'm not going to engage. If I set a boundary and you didn't comply, I just delete your comment. No explanation, no apology.
Right.
I told you what I was available for and what I wasn't.
Yeah.
I had a friend from high school who also has giant titties on that post be like, "Oh my God, they're so big." I was like, delete.
You're like, no. Read. Please read.
Read.
And if you read, read it again.
Read it again. Yeah. But even that, I won't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
Did you read the post? No. Because I don't have, I'm not going to put my energy there.
Right. Yeah. So I'm gonna stick on this train. Embodiment.
Yeah.
Your do it for your own gaze challenge that you started International Women's Day. First of all, I have felt it in my body, and I felt it in the idea of me, like I mentioned, feeling so much better about the fact that I'm just going to dance. I'm just going to live my life and be in myself. The fact that you are modeling, no matter how that comes about, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, be you and love that, has been absolutely gorgeous. And I have, to so many people, I have been like, we all need to do this on small scales for ourselves and with the close people around us. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that is for those that don't know what you've been doing, and kind of what the reaction has been, and how you see that playing into kind of the overall idea of untaming yourself, of your truth telling, of everything that you got going on.
So this weaves into something we were talking about earlier on how social media is like, I all the time, I'm like, the internet is a miracle and a dumpster fire.
Yes.
It's both and everything in between. And the problem with something else I've been doing on my social media is pulling apart, is just like going deeper on these like self-help sound bites, right? Because there's so many things that are put out there as like absolute truths.
Yes.
That are not trauma informed, are not social justice informed, And it's like, stop inadvertently shaming folks. Right. But at the same time, I also get it, because it's marketing, right? It's social media. It's how this shit works. It's how you combat the algorithm. Something has to be shareable. Something has to be engaging. Right. But that's just not how I do things.
Right.
So we go deeper. And so going into 2019, something for the last several years, like I started looking at this in 2014, like how can I use social media as a tool my own way? Because like that's what Untaming Yourself, that's what Wild Soul Movement, it's all about. How do you be who you are and do things your own way? Mm-hmm. That just honors and respects you in a way that honors and respects the collective.
Yes.
Because it's not all about you. I'm not into that navel gazing kind of self-help and spirituality, but you do, like, the self-inquiry is so important, because you mentioned earlier intent versus impact. Yes. We have to also look at everything that we're doing. How's it impacting the world and people around us? Macro and micro. So, one of the things I realized, it's funny because I always reference like this Busta Rhymes quote, "Don't talk about it, be about it." Oh, and social media is very much, Busta Bust.
Oh, yeah.
Woo-ha! I can't help my It's my favorite Busta. Okay. Focus. There's so much talking on social media.
Yeah.
And I've learned this in so many areas of my life, especially dating and men, is like, because I date men, I can't just listen to what people say. I have to watch what they do.
Yes.
And social media doesn't always give us the opportunity to actually see how people be in the world.
Right.
So I was like, well, my jam is embodiment, so I'm going to move. I'm going to challenge myself to post embodiment videos 333 out of 365 days of 2019. Woo! Because there is something about me being me that I've always, ever since I put Wild Soul Movement into the world in 2014, that I realized literally part of what I'm here to do is just be myself and show people me being myself. Not to go, you should be more like me, but to go, you should be more like you.
Yes.
And do the work to find out what you actually is, who you actually are, Mm-hmm. And so it's funny because I'm getting so much, like what you're saying. This is gorgeous. This is amazing. Thank you. It's such a good reminder for me. People are posting their own videos. People are, sharing things with me. Oh my God, I was so upset about something and I thought of you this morning and I just put on a song, danced it out, and I felt better and got on with my day. And I'm like, yes, right? People are like, I can't even dance, but I've been moving my body and it feels so good. And I'm like, yes, that's what this is about. And then it's also so polarizing, because the other thing that I do is I move when I want to move. I post half these videos in like my underwear or my pajamas. Yep. I might not be wearing a bra. My ass cheeks might be hanging out. and this isn't like, I just recently learned the term thirst trap.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's quite a word.
You experiencing me dancing in my underwear as that has nothing to do with me because I'm doing it for my own gaze.
Right.
I don't give a shit. I had a woman the other day on my Facebook page go, "What is this pornography on my Facebook?"
I saw that. Yep.
Obviously, an older white lady who probably calls the police or asks to speak to the manager all the time. She's like, she goes, "Face, get it off." And I'm like, oh my God, she means Facebook.
Oh no. Oh
and
no.
I'm like, ma'am, you're seeing this because you follow my page.
Right.
No, just get off my page.
Right.
And then she left a comment. She's like, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, unfollow me or block me.
Right. Yeah.
You know, which is what she's like, I'm not hating on that you're having this moment. I just don't need to see it. And I'm like, yeah, great. Then don't follow me.
Yeah.
But it is. Every time I post a video, specifically if I'm like in my underwear or something, I get at least like 20 or 30 people unfollow me. I actually made a joking post being like,
this is my favorite.
I've recently, free webinar on how to lose followers on social media. And it was just a joke. And even that, some people were butthurt. People were like, why are you shaming? I'm like, I'm not. It's just a joke. We get to laugh.
I'm like crying now about it.
The webinar is canceled because it's just one tip. Post a video shaking around and jumping around in your underwear.
I remember when that came up and I was crying, like to the point where it came up and I cackled so loud unexpectedly in a public space. And then I kept going back to it and dying laughing. I was like, you are everything. Because like even right now I'm getting chills through my body. It was perfection because it's this whole idea of, I know that what I'm doing seems to be bothering you, but I'm not doing it for you. Right? And I can make the idea that you're projecting all your crap on me funny because it doesn't hit me deep. I'm not letting it.
But also, why do we take ourselves so seriously? I get triggered by stuff. Like I would unfollow things sometimes. I don't care.
Right.
Like, let's have a little fun with this, you know?
Right.
Social media is ridiculous. So this is why, and you know, you had asked me this before we hit record, I started doing stand-up comedy for fun last year, partly because I just needed a different kind of platform to talk about the absurdities of life. And to be quite honest with you, a less PC, less volatilely reactive, right? People are much more receptive at a stand-up comedy show to you saying something a little off color.
Right.
Or like talking about the absurdity of something without having to be so careful about your language.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the context of my work, of course, I want to be a lot more trauma-informed, social justice informed, sensitive to who may be watching or listening. But it's a different container. It's different context. Different rules for engagement when you show up at a stand-up comedy show. And I wanted to play in that container of expression.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you've been podcasting for a long time and well, much longer than I have. And there's a part of this that I find so interesting. The reason I chose to do a podcast was because I felt like a lot of these conversations are happening live. And a lot of times impromptu or overly scheduled at work. And so people don't have the opportunity to absorb in the way that either they prefer or in a way that gives them the time and space to actually digest.
Yes.
So that I think is so interesting. But then add the part of the comedy, because I actually had a guest a few weeks ago that we were talking about her use of memes to talk about kind of identity types in the light and the dark sides of it.
Yes.
That comedy it does a beautiful job of taking the edge off of conversations that can be very contentious, but I don't think, at least personally, I don't think it dilutes the message necessarily. I think it allows you to take your guard down a bit, to sit down at the table and have a conversation about something, or to let it seep a little deeper into your brain.
Yeah. And I mean, context, right? Like there are some comedians who I'm like, that's not.
Yeah. Agreed.
But 100%. And I love that you use the word digest, because that's also, for me, why embodiment work is so important, because we need to work things through our system, right? That's where trauma lives.
Yeah.
Right? Like anyone who has any kind of trauma, you could do talk therapy, you could do all these things, you can like do energy work and stuff, but like unless you're doing something somatic that actually moves the trauma out of your body, like it will stay there. It will stay in your nervous system. So we need these things. And to be honest, laughing is therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being able to see yourself in a joke or see yourself. I talk a lot about dating because that's been a big focus of mine in the last year. And people in the people like especially the women in the audience, they've had these experiences. They've
Right.
met this guy. They've swiped on or off someone just like that, you know.
Yeah.
They've received the dick pic and been horrified, you know,
Yes.
like so
Oh.
it's like you're also having this shared experience because we were talking about like, you know, we talk about being other. Anytime you see, oh my God, that's not just me, or oh my God, I'm not the only one who thinks that's ridiculous, or I'm not the only one who's been codependent.
Right.
One of my things I talk about is this man who he didn't even send me a dick pic. He sent me a dick video. He was
That's happened.
stroking himself in the
Yep.
shower. And I'm
I've
like,
received
listen,
that. Oof,
at a
no.
certain point, this became my fault because I pressed play on the video. I knew exactly what that was going to be when I saw the thumbnail. And your girl pressed play. Anyway, and then I was joking. The joke that I say, which I love, this always gets a laugh, and I'm so happy that people know what codependent means,
Yeah.
because otherwise the punchline wouldn't work, is I'm like, and listen, afterwards I was like, oh, why did you send me that? Like, we've literally only been talking for 2 hours. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, and that's how I know I used to be codependent. For a moment, I felt a little bit guilty
Yes.
for calling him out. And I was like, no, you should be embarrassed.
Right.
Wildly inappropriate, but people, whenever I say the part, I'm like, and that's how you know you used to be a little codependent.
Right? No, it's so funny. I feel like, and again, we're in our 30s. We have been around social media and digital expression for a large portion of our lives. I have a very difficult time with understanding the unwarranted, unsolicited dick pic that is sent. And I know that has nothing to, like, the part of it that I think you were mentioning here is that it's nothing to do. I mean, of course, it's the expression of the physical part of the body, but there's a part of it that you're just trying something. It's not about your genitalia necessarily. It's something about your I don't know if it's a power. I don't know if you find power in that. I'm not sure.
Listen,
but some other expression that's outside of that.
I talk to people about this all the time. This is actually something I love to bring up on first dates. Like, have you ever sent anyone a dick pic? And why? Like, what's the context?
Yes.
Like, but it's different, right? It's like, have you ever sent one to someone who you have not been sexual with who hasn't seen your dick? And if so, why?
Yes.
And probably fortunately for me, and it is a reflection of who I am, unless they're lying, I have someone yet to be like, yes, I've done that. Oh. Unsolicited, right? Because that's different. Unsolicited. But listen, and there's some women out there who actually asked to see it beforehand. And I'm like, listen, I can respect that. Okay. Because there's that moment. We're going to get real graphic for a second.
Yeah.
Anyone who, I'm assuming probably mostly women listening to your podcast, but anyone who is a person who interacts with people who have penises know that moment of the big reveal or not so big reveal where it's like, please be a good one. Please be a good, like, you like this person, you know? And then it's like, it either is or it isn't based on whatever is your standard around that. Because to each their own. Some people might like different things. Bigger is not always better. Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah.
So,
and I know, I will also say this, I think there's that part from a woman, but guys, I think probably go through, I mean, I've had conversations with my guy friends about this. There's a part of this that there's an anxiety on the other side of the exchange.
That's what I'm saying. Anyone who interacts with penises,
yeah, okay.
You could be gender fluid about this.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
And it's kind of, so aside from it being about genitalia, I think there's a part of it it's the same idea of just not having boundaries in spaces and just expressing stuff and projecting stuff and throwing things in spaces. Like, what you're doing is pornography. Well, okay, it's not. Your discomfort with this is you yelling at me about it. I'm not doing this for that. I'm not doing this for you. And I'm also not doing it in an unsolicited way. You chose to be here.
Yeah. And also, this is my own page, which is the digital equivalent of being in my own living room.
Right. But it's you walking into my living room and screaming at me and telling me I'm wrong. That is the equivalent to me of the dick pic, of you coming in and being like, wah! Yeah. It's like, whoa, no.
And part of me was wondering, I wonder if this person doesn't follow me, but like someone she follows shared it maybe?
Right.
But even that is like, well, then you follow a person. Like, this is social media. This is Facebook, y'all. Like, it's all it's
a Wild West in sorts, but you also have control. You have control of what you see.
Just unfollow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, it was funny. So I noticed there was one share on that post, and it was her.
Stop.
Yeah, and I was like, did
Stop
she
it.
share? But she hadn't written it. I was like, she must have shared. Did she share it by accident in an attempt to get rid of it? Because that's even now it's on her page.
Oh
I was like, I hope
no.
so. For all the there was like, did we just get some divine retribution towards every barbecue Becky that's ever existed?
Oh man, I can't even.
I was dying.
I can't even handle that. That's what just happened. It's like I don't know what's happening here, and somehow I made it my own feed too. So it's part of my whole network thinks, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Or
Is this what they mean when they say God works in mysterious ways?
right, okay. I mean, all right, it
Is
did.
this what karma is? I don't know.
Right.
That's great.
Well, I feel like I want to stick on this a little bit about the timing of wonderful things that happen in life and you choosing to go the way you want to go with things and not necessarily doing them for other people. I would love to hear a little bit about one of my favorite bits of advice that you gave me, like at the absolute perfect time. I don't even know if you knew how perfect it was for me, but we're talking about, how you continue to do the wonderful work you're doing in a space that can sometimes feel kind of crowded.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And what you had said to me was run your own race and stay in your own lane. I don't look to my left and my right. I do what I got to do to get there. And then you talked a little bit about your Virgo, the Virgo in you. So I'd love to hear kind of a little bit more about that. Tell us more about that. Not everyone had the ability to kind of be in that situation with us, but I want to kind of welcome them in.
So, I've been building a platform on the internet since 2009, so almost a decade now. October 2009 is when I put up my first blog, my first website in fitness.
Okay.
And then Facebook at that time, I don't think Facebook had like groups or pages until like 2010 or 2011. For sure in 2011 they were around, because when I had created my first fitness program, which the name makes me cringe now, but I'll own that's who I was at the time. It was called Tighter in 10 Days. Marie Forleo helped me name that.
Okay.
And I definitely had a Facebook group for that and a page at that time. And so I've been around for like the evolution of these online platforms,
Yes.
And so I want to make a distinction here. It's important to me to give attribution and give credit and pay homage. Is that how you say that word?
Sure. Yep.
To the tons and tons and tons of women that have been doing embodiment work around liberation, feminine rising, de-shaming the body, destigmatizing. Yes. Like I didn't invent any of this. Right. And my work is largely a synthesis of things that I have learned from others and studied, and I always give credit where it's due. Yes. So I'm not putting myself out there like I'm inventing anything. I synthesize a lot of stuff. I innovate the way I voice it. That is unique because that's me, just like anyone else here who does any kind of work in the world. The thing that makes your work unique is simply that it's coming from you through your filter, your translation, whatever. But the thing that I was around for kind of early was having an online platform. So, these Instagram influencers and things and stuff like that, that wasn't a thing in 2011. We were like building. And so in a lot of ways, I was able to create some loyalty and engagement. And I have women, I had a woman in my workshop in Australia, in Melbourne the other week, who's been with me for she's been following me for 5 years. Like when she met me, she was like, I don't think you understand how unique this is for me. She's like, you've been my mom, you've been my sister, you've been my friend, you're my mentor, you're my guru sometimes, you're my guide. And it was like, just like crying.
Yeah.
Being on the other side of the world and having that experience. And part of that comes from things were less saturated when I started.
Yeah.
So it was easier for me to cultivate these connections with people. But I continue to do that because that's how I am, right? Like I'm not trying to scale up and have hundreds of thousands of followers. I care more about actually using the platform as a tool to engage and build relationships with people.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm going on a little bit of a tangent and I want you to re-ask the question.
Okay. So I loved your tangent though. It was perfect with it because my question was more around, can you share a little bit more about what it is to run your own race, stay in your own lane, and how that kind of plays into the Virgo?
Now I see how I went on the tangent.
Yeah.
So for me, I've been in spaces, especially with a lot of online marketing kind of entrepreneur people, who were like, this is how you do it. Here's the strategy. And I'm like, cool. So over the years, I've tried out a lot of strategies, and like I can always, this goes back to what you were saying earlier about like you still have to see how things feel to you.
Yeah.
Like, for example, one of the things was like, well, you shouldn't be answering your own DMs. Okay, so I had my assistant do it for a while, and I actually hated that.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way it felt. It was impersonal. I have the energy for that. I have the capacity for that. I love doing it. I love connecting with my people. And then, like I said, when I run workshops and people show up, I'm like, I know. I mean, indirectly, I know who you are because I've been seeing your name on my social media or in my inbox for years.
Right. We have a relationship.
We have a relationship. Yeah. And so, listen, I'm an extrovert in that way. Some people, that would be their nightmare to be in their DMs, so don't do it. But for me, a lot of why I can like stay in my lane in an unwavering way now is because I've done a lot of trial and error. I've done a lot of research and development. I've experimented with a lot of things and had to realize, oh, that wasn't for me. Oh yeah, that really works. Nope, not for me. Oh, I like this, but let me tweak it so it's me.
Yes.
It's the learn the rules so you can break them thing.
Yes.
And I've never been one who could just take someone's word for it. I have to have the felt experience myself. Oh. And listen, I don't know that everyone is like that. I think some people can hear what someone says and just know for themselves, oh, that won't work for me. That's cool if you're like that. Me personally, I'm a taster. I have to taste it, digest a little bit, and then go, okay, that works, or no, it doesn't. But if I'm always looking outside, like, so last year, one of the things I did, very tangible things, was I removed myself from like 3 entrepreneur groups that I'd been in.
Yeah.
Because I just could, even having the point of distraction of seeing what other people were doing, I reached a point where I was like, I can't even have it in my space whatsoever.
Right.
So that works for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't need, also because this is my work, so I've been deeply practicing the surrender and the trust around it. I don't need external validation. I don't need anyone being like, yeah, that'll work. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like I'm done. I don't hire business coaches anymore. I'm done. I haven't in years. You know, like my intuition, my body, like my inner knowing, that's my business coach. Which, listen, again, I've been doing this for almost a decade.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, I certainly needed mentors.
Yeah.
And also in a lot of ways, again, I needed mentors whose shit didn't work for me. So then I can have that contrast to go, okay, well, if that didn't work, what's an alternative?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the things that I've always, in every conversation we've had, I hear from you is you have this community of people that have earned the right to kind of be the voices in the room with you. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily have to be mentors. They don't necessarily have to be coaches, but you're able to explore and to test and see how things do align with that inner intuition of yours that's so strong and so reliable that you're not saying, okay, I've gotten to this point and I'm just living in the echo chamber of my ambition. I am bringing in other voices and I'm learning other things and I am learning and stretching, but I'm still doing it in my lane and my way.
Totally. And you know what is something I do too? I love what you just said about people who've like earned the right to be in the room with you. This is so important that we have peers at our level, some peers who are ahead of us, some peers that are behind us, so we can be like lifting as we climb, also like have some people that are inspiring us and also some people at our level, like right up in the trenches with us. I think that mix is so important. And that's not even, I didn't invent that concept either. I think I learned that from a guy named Jason Gaynard, and I'm pretty sure he had cited someone else, and that's just as far back as I can take it.
Yeah.
But yes, I do a lot of out loud processing where I just need to speak it out loud to hear myself and then connect dots. And it's not necessarily that I'm asking for feedback, but I need a witness.
Right. Yeah. So I need a witness and maybe add a little bit of spice in there with whatever you were going to add to my recipe.
Ask you a question. Right? Have you thought about this? Oh, amazing. Like sometimes someone can help you connect. Yeah. And I have so many people like that, which is a beautiful thing. And then also calls for another boundary when folks are trying to like reach out and connect and they want to align with you as a peer. Like, honestly, I'm full.
Right.
But, and I decide, right? So like when I met you at that conference, I was like, you get in here, girl.
I know. Okay.
You were like, oh, we need each other, it was like kids I described. And I know that feeling to me, it always feels like 2 kids on a playground who are like, hey, want to be my friend?
Yes, exactly.
I think I even said that to you.
Yeah. You're like, this is going to happen. I was like, oh, girl, yes, this is. Because there are a lot of people. Yeah. And there are a lot of people that I think, unfortunately, the cadence of that is I'm taking your toy, so now you have to play with me. Not, hey, do you want to play with me?
Yeah.
Right? Or I'm just going to come in and keep coming into your space until you play with me. And it's like, this needs to be a mutual reciprocal thing. We might not be in the exact same space, but it does need to be something that we kind of consent together on.
Totally. And it's like, because it's an even, I love that you use the word reciprocal. That's actually one of my words this year. I have 4 words:
What are
worthiness,
they?
reciprocity, receptivity, and intimacy.
Oh, yes.
It's a good 4 pillars. So things need to be an even energetic exchange. And even doesn't always mean like balanced, right? Like I think about like the Libra scales or like a seesaw. Sometimes it's like, I got you, you got me. I got you, you got me. But it all comes out in the wash.
Yes.
And it never feels like, and even like, say you go through a tough time and we have like 3 conversations in a row and it's like primarily about you, that'll even itself out. And
Yeah.
I'm not like keeping tabs on that. I'm not worried about it.
Right.
Versus the people that it feels like you're always pouring in and nothing's ever coming back. I just can't, I don't have space for that. That's what people pay me for, right?
Right.
And in that case, the energetic exchange is the dollars that are coming into my bank account in order for me to pour.
Right. Oh, yes. That's so beautiful. I think there's a part of this that when you're doing this work internally and you are digesting and you are really seeing and understanding where your lane comes into vision, a lot of times you actually understand that the relationships that have gotten you to the point where you are right now that may not have allowed you to be in your lane can be that drain of energy, and to maintain it as you're stepping forward in this path. They might not want to be on this path with you.
Totally.
But it's not your job to pull them along like the heaviest piece of luggage. It's also not your job to pull yourself back and hold back because you need to maintain a relationship that is no longer serving you. And personally, I know that's been such a hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just so beautiful how you even again, I just had to speak for like 10 minutes about something that you said in like 2 seconds about reciprocity.
Yeah, but and I love, and to keep this lane metaphor, I've never thought about expanding it out this way, but it makes so much sense as you're just saying that. It's like life is like an entire road trip where sometimes you're the 3-lane highway. Sometimes you're off on that side little country road and you need to be on your own a little bit. Yes. And then you come back from the wilderness onto like the service road. And it's like next to the highway, but you're not exactly, you know what I mean? Phases and stages. Yes. And you honor it. And again, one of the ways to evaluate which are the aligned relationships in your life is the people who, it doesn't matter if you're on the 3-lane highway, it doesn't matter if you're on the countryside road, it doesn't matter if you're on the service road, they're going to be there. Yeah. And you would be for them as well, right? Like I have some friends who I know are like very internal. They'll disappear off the face of the earth for like months at a time. Yeah. And then they'll resurface and I'm like, you're back. What's up? How's it been? What's going on? Right. I'm not like, where were you? Right. It's just like we can honor who we are, how we're built, where we are, the phases and stages, the seasons and the cycles of our lifetimes, and we're good, right? We are. And part of that ability to be good is that you're doing your own internal work, whatever that is, right? You're sourced enough, you're validated enough, you're approved and accepted and loved and trusted enough from within that you're not always needing to feed it off of other people. Right. And you're worried, again, I love service roads and I love this because you're also not worried about somebody else's location of their car at all times because you're in a car too. You're on your own journey. So if I go off on that side road, that wooded road where there's no reception, you still have a journey that's going on at the same time. Totally. My journey shouldn't be dictating your worth in life or your feeling about yourself because you are worthy no matter what. Yes. We are not on the codependent highway. No. But the roads, right? They're interconnected. They go, they take us. Oh, I love this. I love anytime I could build out a metaphor. I live in metaphors. So both I see a therapist and I work with a coach and I'm always like, I know you probably want to talk about like descriptions and definitions, but like I live in metaphor and analogy. Metaphor. That's where 100%. We're living. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me on highway metaphor. Yes. Okay. Right. I have one more question for you. Well, I actually have 2. Sorry. Great. All right. I love it. Okay. So I feel like the one I want to ask you is what gives you hope in the world today? Oh, girl. I love this question. It's watching nature and remembering that the humans are an extension of nature. And
Yeah.
so the laws of nature are the laws of humanity. Nature doesn't do anything fast. She is the master of using what she has. She doesn't take more than she needs. So when shit is out of whack and out of balance, it's because people are not abiding by the friggin' laws of nature. And they're forgetting that we are people and that we are extensions of nature. So
Yes.
what gives me hope is literally watching hummingbirds do what hummingbirds do.
Yes.
Watching literally my plants that I have like 8 plants in my periphery right now. Each and every one has a part of it that's dying, a part of it that's growing, and a part of it that's like a tender little shoot coming out.
Yes.
We are like that. Life is
Yes.
like that. The collective is like that.
Yes.
That's
And
what gives me hope, is that it's actually everything is as it should be. Even the things we resist, even the things whatever, there's a freaking function and a purpose for that shit.
yes. And I think you posted this morning about our planet and the little flamingo that
Yes.
was running. I watched that last week, and like the beginning, if anybody hasn't watched Our Planet, it's the first episode. It's like probably halfway to 2/3 of the way through. And there's this whole migration of flamingos. And I was peeing my pants laughing at the flamingos as they were running by. So the
Totally.
whole herd of them. And then you had that
Oh
little
my
guy
God.
who's struggling. And it I'm so happy you were crying. I don't know. I was crying too, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? But we've all felt that feeling of everybody's running and it looks super easy for them, right? Nature is making this process. It's just natural for all of them. They don't even have to think. These little babies, like they don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it. And
Yeah.
there's going to be a time where you are that flamingo in the back with the salt on its legs, struggling to get to the next step. And just how the world kind of works itself. So there are all different layers of where you fall.
That post I made was inspired because I texted my brother and I was like,
Oh,
why am I crying at this baby
oh, I was crying. Oh, I
flamingo?
cried and then I texted my mom. I was like, you need to watch this. The flamingos are amazing. And then there's a part that's really sad, but I don't know. It's
Oh my
worth it.
God.
Just watch it.
And my brother is like, yeah, because nature is brutal. And I type back in caps, I'm like, it's the circle of life.
And
And
then
then
you're
he
like,
sends
hi,
me a
Simba.
GIF that's like Rafiki holding up Simba, except they've edited it and he throws Simba
No.
into the, yeah. And I'm like, that's so wrong.
As a child, I had a really hard time with cartoons that were traumatic-ish for me. So like All Dogs Go to Heaven, I had to be walked out of the theater within the
I
first like
never even watched it. I'm like,
and
why would I go see this?
and Lion King I couldn't handle. Like I just like could not. I was beside myself, hiccup crying. So they weren't
I'm
three-dimensional.
laughing because I can relate.
Yes, you and I would have been great. We would have just been like crying outside with the popcorn in our hands, being like, "This is all we can handle. This is all we can do."
Pass me a goober. I get a Sour Patch Kid.
Yes. Oh, and then my mouth will hurt because I eat the whole box.
Oh
Yes.
my God. Okay, you
Okay.
said you had 2 more. That was one. What's the other one?
Last one. Last one is I just want to hear about what the next year is like for you. I mean, you gave me the 4 words. Personal, professional goals. I want to hear a little bit about this wild soul movement stuff you've got coming to Boston soon. So make sure you plug that because we got a lot of people in Boston that need you.
Wonderful. Yeah,
In
actually,
their life.
so the workshop is May 10th and 11th, so I'll be there soon.
Yes.
Going up. But if you go to wildsoulmovement.com, there's an events tab, and any classes, any workshops, anything I'm doing is always up on the page there. But Wild Soul Movement is my sensual movement practice that combines movement, mantras, and meditation to help women get out of their heads and into their body. So what we were talking about earlier is like just like discovering the unexpressed, underdeveloped, under-honored, trusted, accepted parts of yourself. That's what this movement practice is functions around. And there's an arc of power, I call it, because the whole practice is meant to help you embody and embrace and live in and from your power, which is rooted in your truth, right? And all that is within you, whether you know it or not. It's an access issue. It's not an existence issue. So I've never actually said it like that before.
I love it. I feel like I'm like, should I write it down? That was gorgeous.
So we take people through surrender and release, trust and receptivity, wild dreaming desire, and love and truth. And it really is like medicine. I have some people who come to a workshop every year because it'll be a different experience every time, depending on where they are. So I'm running 11 workshops this year, 8 in the US, 1 in Toronto. I did 2 in Australia. I just got back from, and I'll be in the UK this summer. I'm bringing back my teacher training. So I train people in that modality so they could teach classes.
Nice.
And I run a year-long women's circle called Power, which actually centers around the Wild Steel Movement practice and takes people through those topics. We spend 3 months on each topic, and there's a different mantra for every month. It's amazing. We have 128 women in there this year. This is the most updated version of this. I've been running this since 2014. I love it. And then I'm also developing two like next steps after that. There's like a life mentorship that I do. I actually did it for 4 years and then I took a breather. But then there's also, and I did this for the first time last summer. I just called it a business immersion. This is for like the creatives, the leaders, the entrepreneurs who want to be existing in the world in the way that we've been talking about this whole time. That is aligned for you. That's more aligned with your own truth and your own like who you are and how you're built than, what the world says you should be doing.
Right.
And so that was so fun last summer. I had 14 women.
I remember when you had just kicked it off. I think we talked right around that time.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I didn't make a quote sales page. I just sent out an email and I put a couple posts on social media and I was like, yo, this is what we're doing. If you're tired of like the nonsense in the industry, if you just feel like you never fit in, if you have such an ache to just serve and do your sacred work in the world, and you're not attached to like running a 7-figure business, like you just like you want to contribute. You need to make enough to like support your family, support yourself, pay your bills, be generous. Like those are my people,
Yeah. Nice.
So it's a lot of stuff, but I have a lot of capacity, girl.
Yeah. I feel like, you activate that capacity in the work that you do too when you let go of the stuff that's draining.
Totally. I like when you said that. But let me tell you, my top priority this year.
Yes.
Doing a lot of healing around romantic relationship and partnership. And I'm really I'm preparing myself for my man this year.
Good. Yes.
It's fun because I've been doing this dating. I've been calling it my conscious hoe phase because that's funny and it's
I love that.
Yeah. And I keep just attracting men who are more and more yes, this is closer to what I want. Yes. And I'm just the way I'm describing it, inspired by my friend Ollie, is I am just letting the masculine love me through these different expressions of men that are showing up.
That's
and
beautiful.
Just practicing healthier love, right? Because I had to learn. A lot of us have to learn.
Yes.
And allowing myself to slowly but surely let the hypervigilance go.
Yes. Ooh. Ooh.
So that's actually my top priority this year.
I love that. And I will add that for the things that show you the things that you don't necessarily want, they become wonderful material.
1,000%.
For your stand-up.
Exactly. Everybody wins.
I love it. I love it so much.
It's either contrast, comedy, or something really aligned and enjoyable.
Oh, and you mentioned this before we hopped on. You have a stand-up coming to New York, right? You mentioned that?
That'll be May 18th in New York City.
Okay. So anybody in New York, go find her.
And so Instagram is the best place to follow me at Elizabeth DiAlto. And I keep one of those handy dandy link tree links. So literally anything I'm doing or anything that's going on or any way to work with me, it's always that little link in my Instagram profile is it'll be there.
Like gold.
Like gold.
Right.
Anything you need to know. Link tree.
I know. I am so excited for all that you have coming. Me too,
girl. I was so excited to see you in those pictures on stage, giving your TED Talks, talking about your stuff. I knew this interview. I was so excited for this. I knew this would be the kind of conversation where I'm ask me something. I kind of don't want it to end, but I know it actually has to.
Yes. Well, we could always, we could do this whether it's on a podcast or not. We could always do this. So.
I know.
Well, I thank you so much. And I'm so excited you'll be in Boston.
I have to.
Boston needs you.
Yeah.
Boston needs more of you. So that's just me being greedy, I think, too. So.
Fine. I'll indulge you.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so very much. Talk to you soon.
See you later.
Bye.